international organizations. He is the member of International Society for Sustainability and Development, Japan, scientific member to the third and fourth International Conference on Economics and Development organized by the International Institute of Knowledge Management, Colombo. In fact, there are a lot many memberships. It's very difficult that I can refer to all of them. He has published extensively many research papers in national and international journals. He has also completed several research projects from institutes like ICSSR and various other government departments. Sir is a very eloquent speaker and has delivered several lectures in national and international teachers training programs and all. So, with this brief profile, sir, I would hand over the session to you. Most welcome to the New Center, Murshidabad.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I express my, first of all, I express my apology for being little bit too late. I express my thanks and gratitude to Dr. Syed Atif Jilani, sir, for his kind words. Thank you very much, sir. I express my sincere thanks and gratitude, who I considered as one of my mentor, Professor Faiza Abbasi, madam. And so the association with Aligarh Muslim University is really a kind of learning process for me always, and especially being part of this NEP orientation and sensitization program. And at this particular platform, it give additional kind of a benefit to me. The reason is that it's unlike FIPs and refresher courses. This is the course, or rather, this is the program where very eminent teachers from various across the higher education institute in our India, very early young professionals to very senior professors, they join in. So having an interaction and dialogue with them on new education policy, it helps me to learn a lot, really, if I truly I need to speak. So therefore, it's not a particular forum wherein I consider myself as a resource person and deliver lecture. It's not like that. Rather, I'll share my view or kind of my understanding on NEP, and we'll try to interact so that we can get out of from different stakeholders that how we have already approached the NEP, what is actually in offerings, and in the future course of action. So what should we can try collectively. So briefly, this is my intention for this being here online. And again, I express my sincere thanks and gratitude to Aligarh Muslim University for giving me the chance again to deliver a lecture on the issue of research and development, which is one of the parameters of new education policy, along with certain parameters. And all of many lectures has already been conducted. And as we all know, all of us, we know that the NEP 2020 or New Education Policy 2020 is based on 8 parameters, or rather, the 8 pillars actually holding this NEP 2020. The policy framework is based upon these 8 parameters. What are those parameters? It is known to you, but just I'm repeating for our convenience. The first one is, or rather, you can sequence it as you find it convenient. Now, having said so that Indian knowledge system, holistic and multidisciplinary education, academic leadership, governance and management, student diversity and inclusive education, research and development, higher education and society, information and communication technology, and skill development. Now, these are the 8 parameters that has been, those are the parameters actually the guiding force of NEP 2020. Now, if you look very closely to these 8 parameters, I observe that 2 parameters are completely new introduction to the higher education institute if they are not technical institute per se. Now, what are those 2 basic 2 parameters that I find new inclusion? One is the Indian knowledge system and another is the skill development. Rest of the parameters overtly or covertly are there in the higher education institute. So if you talk about the holistic and multidisciplinary education, certainly the curriculum framework, that is choice-based credit system, is paved the way for interdisciplinary courses or multidisciplinary courses, as well as the last 1 decade. Precisely so, if I have to say, that collaborative research is also gaining importance, and that is now going to be part of different higher education institute. One of the major changes that is going to take place is that the colleges, that 4-year degree courses have has been introduced. Now this 4-year degree course, the 4th year, is precisely having a research dimensions. That means we are actually prone the research intervention. That means we are preparing our students, or try to prepare our students even at the undergraduate level. And certainly the institutes, the universities must be or being viewed as a research driven university. So research got, certainly it is always be a priority, but this priority has been reprioritized and certain new dimensions have been added. Fine. Now, if you look at the rest of the parameters, that academic leadership, governance, and management, the NAC accreditation process, it is always there. The evaluation process is there. Even the research outcome of the college level, as well as at the university level, or the postgraduate level, or institute, even if it's named as deemed university, or for that matter, the college, the autonomous colleges, they are also having similar kind of structure in place. So research was always given a priority in the accreditation process. Even the National Institute Ranking Framework, NIRF, therein also this parameters is very much there, and more weightage even been given to the career progression of the teachers. So the teachers, possibly the 20 years back, the type of requirement they were having, and the teachers presently they are having, especially in the arena of research, it's not become a kind of a choice. Rather, it has become a compulsion to carry on certain kind of research and collect certain credits. In that way, your progression is closely linked with that. So all those things are known to you. I shouldn't reiterate and keep on repeating this one. So what I mean to say, that these are very much there in the higher education institute. Certain dimensions have been added. Now, higher education and society, the linkages between the education and society, from the time the society is being formed, or rather we try to understand the society, it might be the formal education system may not be there, but the informal knowledge system was always be there. So therefore, the societal changes, it was actually based on two major pillars. One is the informal knowledge system, and another is the formal research system, formal knowledge system. Now, what we are part of formal knowledge system. But at the same time, if you look at our civilization and the invention of the fire, we changed the entire human civilization, course of human civilization, with strokes of stones. The human civilization invented fire, and that changed the society, the economy as well as the society. But no laboratory exists, no institution they carried on in this particular, possibly one of the major invention the human civilization ever made. And then you have a huge body of informal knowledge system. I'm not going to get into detail because my understanding, or I must be come to the point, or the parameter, which is research and development precisely. And there are certain segments are there in the research and development category. And the first segment, precisely, I will try to deal with, try to grapple with. There are other parameters also within the broad domain of research and development. So I need to reach there to do justice of the to the invitation that I received. But having said so, then information and communication technology, if I have to say, then maybe 15 years back, when the ICT term is being used to evaluate an institution, possibly we are showing that we are using the PowerPoint presentations. Maybe we are using that same thing even now also. But the major changes that is taking place, that tomorrow I'll get a transcript, whatever I told here, and I can that transcript, maybe the YouTube recording would be there. And the third and important part is that from that particular transcript, you can create a PowerPoint, or maybe the virtual lecture is ready. And this precisely it is happening because of all of us know, because of the huge growth of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So therefore, if we make a journey, start a journey, when we are hunting other society, or we are in the caves, we are depending on directly on nature for our survival. The fire changed the whole thing. And subsequently, in the formal knowledge system, we are working with artificial intelligence and machine learning. But at the same time, I'll just give one example and I move forward. You may think that why slides are not moving. Maybe I do not have much slides. Couple of slides are there. So mostly I rely on whatever I'm telling, but certainly it will move at one point of time. So because what we learned from the Darwin's theory, the change is constant. That's the major philosophical outcome we got from the Darwinism, we can say. And if you look at the Hegelian concept of history and the concept that we got from the Darwin biological sciences, it has been blended by Marx to bring the word development within the societal framework, because the word development it's not very old that it become part of to explain the society, but the word exists, but it was mostly being part of the biological sciences. Now, the synthesis, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis that we understood, it's a triadic process. And this triadic process is actually not only bringing changes in the society, but this triadic process is very much part of the philosophy of research. That precisely important. I'll come to those issues. So therefore, thank you very much, Varadas, sir. So if it is a triadic process, then this triadic process might be part of informal knowledge system. It might be gradually evolved within the formal knowledge system. So therefore, if we talk about the word development, and then we come to the research, then one particular shades that we got is that development gradually, it transcended from the biological sciences to explain the societal changes. So therefore, if the word development we accept, and if we follow the changes that is taking place within the informal knowledge system as well as the formal knowledge system, then it is obviously a research. Now, whether when we are carrying it within the formal knowledge system, we are being awarded by certain degrees. But if it is the informal knowledge system, then possibly no such degrees are being given. And again, the importance of the informal knowledge system and the limitation that we still confront, or rather we'll keep on confronting, that is simple. That when tsunami came, the people, mostly who are outcome of the formal knowledge system, are on the sea beach. They are spending vacations. And we know the catastrophe. And we got very apprehensive about the Jaruas who we don't consider even civilized, and they don't mingle with us, so-called civilized people. And we become very susceptible that what happened to them and rest of the living beings staying in the forest in Andaman Island. And later on we realized that we failed to get any hint, or our science still limited to read that particular signal that the tsunami is coming or some tectonic changes below the earth is taking place or below the water is taking place. And that can lead to a huge catastrophic disaster. But those Jaruas, they read it and they took them to a safe place, including the animals. Now, here the biggest puzzle that we are confronting or we are negotiating with, that is, there is a huge body of informal knowledge system exists and which is absolutely rich. Therefore, the formal institute of formal knowledge system is try to negotiate with the informal knowledge system and capture the best out of that or try to understand that. So irrespective of the discipline, we are doing that one. You may say that why did I use the term irrespective of the discipline? Obviously so. So, for that matter, the folk music, if I say, they do not have a formal training of music. But the entire world, they cherish the folk music. Maybe the formal institutions started taking it further, this folk music. But the original people, the way of life is being depicted there. So therefore, the formal knowledge system, while working on the folk music, whatever be the type, wherever, whosoever be the people, whosoever be the community, whatever be the places, actually, the formal knowledge system is negotiating with the informal knowledge system. There are many more. So therefore, the traditional knowledge, what we say, now presently there is now when we talk about the Indian knowledge system, certainly many people, they put weightage on the Vedic culture and all. Fair enough, that needs to be studied. But at the same time, one of the major intention of the Indian knowledge system is to, or it must be rather, I can say, within the ambit of NEP 2022, forge a link, a stronger link with the informal knowledge system. And if you look at your research agenda, you find certain changes are taking place within the research agenda. And it might be someone is working on food technology and he is or she is working on the traditional foods or the food culture, that I can say. So there is a scientific aspect, there is a sociological aspect, there is social aspect, there is cultural aspect. So therefore, our research agenda, in spite of our disciplinary orientation, we try to break that disciplinary boundary. Now, say for example, the fermented food. So the fermented food, when the research is a huge body of research exists. I am not a scientist. I do not have any knowledge either on biological sciences or natural sciences for that matter. But I understand that this is closely linked with the high altitude because their foods, the way, the normal plain, the river-based civilization, they survive. The mountain, they don't survive in that way, doesn't survive in that way. And their food has to be preserved. And if it has to be preserved, the fermentation actually provides certain kind of additional temperature, which is a requirement to cope the climate, the extreme cold. And there is a close linkages. So might be the biologists who are working, they are aware of this fact. But do those people have learned it from any formal institution? No, it's a way of life. And that kind of way of life, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, we find that mostly we are relying on a way of life which actually being followed by our grandfather, grandmother, or even our parents. A very simple way of life and the type of foods we started consuming. We realize that if even your hotels, restaurant, and all kind of other support system is remain closed. Maybe that getting affected by corona, we lost many of our relatives, our fellow citizens. But at the same time, we try to look more closely a very simple way of life, which our forefather they have followed. And many of them, they are even not, they didn't reach to the formal institutions. So that means it's a continuation of the informal knowledge system. Now, this NEP 2020 has certain backgrounds, and maybe I may find positive time if I keep on telling, just move away from the things I was supposed to say. But in spite of that, these points are pretty important to understand, because higher education institute, as I told, all these 8 parameters would be there, and most parameters would be innovative, will part of our innovations. Mostly now we are using a word, higher education ecosystem. Now the ecosystem is, again, see that the education and the ecosystem is again a word from the biological science. Still it is very much part of biological sciences. Now we are using the management students, they are also using the ecosystem, business ecosystem. So the ecosystem is gradually got into the lexicon. So therefore, if we have to say that higher education ecosystem, rather if we have to say the educational ecosystem, then these points are very much important. And all of you know that one, that the NEP 2020, the documents. Just if you just turn on the pages, these are the salient features, you'll get it. Some are very overtly said in the policy documents. Some are there in the overtly are there. So therefore the points that I mentioned, few are direct references. The first point that I would like to highlight, new economic reforms in 1991 paved the way for integrating India's higher education with the global education network. So the last part is actually getting more prominence, that we are trying to integrate with the global knowledge system. And as a reference point, we are also using simultaneously, that a knowledge system, the ancient India or our ancient civilization, their rich knowledge base, we are portraying that, okay, we were our civilizations where the huge body of knowledge, when the Western world hardly exists in the knowledge system other than Greece, because the earlier civilization. So at the top, there's a China, and on one hand there is Greece, and the other side, you can go to the African subcontinent. And if you go little corner away, you can reach to Europe. And below there, you can go to all the Singles and all, which is Sri Lanka and all. Now, this is a large part which you call Eurasia. Now, this Eurasia, actually, we are portraying the knowledge base that was there. We try to grapple with. We are doing the research on that. Okay, fine, absolutely fine. But what was there? So at the top, there was a Silk Route, which is called terrestrial route, and it got divided. And in the below, there is the Indian Ocean. And if you cross the Karakoram mountain, and then you can subsequently, you can reach to Europe. So therefore, the knowledge, faith, religion, art, culture, crafts, aesthetics, trade. So that rich history or legacy, we try to portray. Even if you look from the international relation perspective, who are doing the research on the international relations, and those who are working on the Sino-Indian relationship, or India as a country, what is the political geography that the post-colonial India is negotiating with? You find that we generally portray that, okay, India-Sino relation, Indo-China relationship is not a very linear relationship. It's a curvilinear. It's a lot of ups and downs. And we always discuss about the relationship with our neighbors. And if you closely follow, you will find that the international relations from multilateralism, rather we are not getting a multilateral body, rather different sub-regional groups are being formed. And if there is some kind of competing relationship, then you will find that in the Silk Route, both China and India, they are trying to score a higher point. So on the one hand, we are reaching into the deep into the Myanmar, or might be we are crossing the Bangladesh, we are Mongolia, and this side also we are trying to reach. And all the relationship, that means that old trade route and Indian Ocean trade. If you take the Red Sea, sometimes it's become a bone of contention. Even US is considering the importance, possibly. So I'm not an expert. Sorry, I shouldn't make such random comments. But what I try to portray, let's see, these become a very real issues. And it's become part of research. But what is the precursor? The precursor is the new economic policy. Because new economic policy integrated the economy of India with the global economy. And once we got integrated with the global economy, we consider the population not as a threat or not as a bane. Rather, it might be used as a boon. So we are trying to utilize the population dividend. The word dividend has been added to the population. Now, why it has been considered, and therefore the term in 2010 or 2009-10, during that period of time, the knowledge economy, that started getting more and more importance. And why is it so? Because West is negotiating with a situation where they are confronting either zero population growth or negative population growth, most of the countries of the West. So therefore, they do not have young people. They do not have adequate workforce. And highly skilled workforce, it's really lagging. And if they have to take from their own countries, they have to pay huge amount. So any new economic policy, once it got integrated, the so-called skilled and highly skilled people for global South, where 2/3 of the population exist, or more than 3/4 of the population of the world exists, and out of that majority are poor, there's a huge problem of unemployment and all kind of economic and social challenges, still a reality, including the gender inequality. which is again having a historical legacy that we are carrying forward. Because historically, actually, we deprived not only the lower caste, the tribes from the knowledge system, but the women across the caste, they have been deprived from the knowledge system. And that is why we are more strongly, we have to handle the issues, or rather address the issues of gender parity or gender equality. And it's part of the research again. And when we talk about the interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary research, across the discipline, that gender issues is getting more and more prominence. And having said so, the point that we'd like to highlight, that okay, we find that we become a beneficiary of the Western industrializations and growth. And people from here started moving or started getting assignments abroad. And that is having a direct benefit to the economy of our country, which we call remittances. And then finally, another stage, the next wave that we confronted, that the West realized, okay, why should I have the production unit at my own country? Because that will utilize, or rather exploit, allow the more exploitations of the resources, natural resources of my country. And certainly a high cost involved. So let's change the production base to China, or Taiwan, or Hong Kong, or South Korea, or India, or Bangladesh. And that created another kind of opportunity to utilize the population dividend. So, and at the ground realities is that government in the post-reform period gradually withdrawn from the production system. Earlier, everything is owned by the government, and government told that, okay, we will not be part of the production system. We rather look at the distribution system, or creating an environment for the more productions. So government become a facilitator for what? Facilitator for global capital, global investment. And we always measure that, okay, China attracted more foreign direct investment. We fail to do that. We'll try more aggressively. This is a different story altogether. But again, if I look very closely, we find that if government jobs shrink, and it's bound to shrink, there is no doubt about that. Because the space that is being cleared by the governments, that has been expected, the private sector will occupy. And when the private sector, not only the private sector from country, from abroad, and that's the way the entire new economic policy functioning. But given that particular fact, can the education system remain unchanged? No. So therefore, that was the biggest trigger to get more closely linked with the global knowledge system or global educational system. Now, the question that arises here out again, including the research agenda, that for a long period of time, especially in the post-reform period, if you follow the research agenda was more driven, not only driven by the Western funding, especially in the scientific arena, but it's mostly in tune with the global problems. I'm not against that one. And at certain period of time or point of time, the research agenda of the sub-regional level within our country, that got diluted. Mostly we are talking about the bigger issues rather than the people, knowledge that surrounds my higher education institute, which may not be located in a very premium places, rather may be located in the far-flung places or remote places or isolated places. And India is a very absolutely diversified, and it will remain a very diversified. Every 1 kilometer, India changes. So therefore, from there, if you look very closely, that we gradually gravitated from British-led or British education system, that was the Macaulay onwards. We follow the framework, the colonial structure didn't alter, or rather the way Europe they conceived the education, so we are much more influenced. I'm not going into the historical nitty-gritty of that, or I'm not criticizing also that one, but we gravitated towards that because US, when the US dominations is not only that US academic structure, education structure, and the very premier institutions, those who are got the world ranking, top ranking ranked, we started following that structure and that actually bringing changes in our education system. And new education policy 2020 is actually trying to summarize that whatever changes that took place in 1991 and the reality that we are confronting, or we have to confront rather, not out of choice, but out of compulsion. And the compulsion cannot be looked at in a negative manner. Compulsion means, again, survival of the fittest. And if we talk about survival of the fittest, then it's competitive. And if you follow the world economic structure, it is the competition that dominates, that predominates. And competition, again, based on two parameters. One is efficiency, another is profit. Now, one of the primary reasons that has been showed in the post-liberalized era that our system is not competitive, not efficient, and neither it is getting adequate profit so that the economy, the size of the economy can be expanded. And therefore, the post-1991 scenario, the importance of business school, the importance you find that in pre-1991 scenario, make a comparison, the importance of the business schools, importance of the communication technology or computer sciences. It become paramount. The reason being the competitive system, competitive world demands multitasker with a very high skill. Multitasker is not a bad word. To do a job simultaneously, work simultaneously, it's not an easy task. And forget it, the technology has replaced us for a long period of time. That we initially had a debate, labor intensive, capital intensive. These are become is a bygone era, cliche. Now we are replacing the human minds because the West realized that we are bringing so many people, we are investing so much. Instead of that, invest on artificial intelligence and machine learning. That will further replace the requirement. Forget about the human labor, but even the human intelligence also. So that is the global or dominant global discourse. So India is such a country that we cannot negotiate or we can follow in total. So we have to make certain kind of reconciliations. So here, instead of inclusion, exclusion is a major problem. If you look at the public funded institute, the school education system, it's remain free and it must be. Education for all or midday meal or universalization of education, other support system, the different kind of scholarship being provided to the higher education institute. Why these things are there, including some kind of research support? Because on the one hand, we have a globally competitive scenario is gradually becoming a reality in Indian scenario. Not only in the school educations or college educations, but at the university level also. So the growth of private universities and very efficient and very well managed universities. And certainly tomorrow the foreign universities also having. Because if the majority of the population of the world, if they are from global south, so they are attracting those students to those institutions. Maybe it's MIT or maybe London School of It's very competitive, highly competitive. But having said so, it is also true that we need to be tuned with that. Not only that means we are given a situations where some paradox we have to confront. On the one hand, we have to look at that, see that we have to inclusive education. We have to think about, especially the publicly funded institute. They have a major challenges. The private institutions, they can sacrifice the issue of inclusion. They can only depend on the merit and the tuition fees, high tuition fees. They can reap the benefit of the affluent segment of the society. But the publicly funded institutions are committed to the constitutions of India, the basic flavor of constitutions, the philosophy that we talk about, the ethos and ethics of higher education that we have imbibed from the past and try to carry on. So we are having much more challenges. And we have certain kind of limitations also that's inherent. We talk about 5 to 6% expenses by the government of the GDP, but in reality it is not taking place. We have only less than 1% of the GDP being spent for research and development. These are real issues. We may do some statistics, we can bring a certain changes out there, but these are the reality we are confronting. So the premier institutes, be it centrally funded or maybe in some state funded premier institute, if you isolate them and if you in between make the entire research collaboration, free entry and exit, lifelong learning, inclusion of the segment which have been excluded over time, then what is going to happen? We may find that's a natural tendency or it's happening that maybe our best students will go to MIT or Harvard School of Harvard University, or our best students will go to IITs, IIMs, or National Institute of Technology, or the premier universities, which are top-ranked universities, publicly funded universities. That is always there. And when NEP is there, when free entry and exit, maybe we become apprehensive at the college level, at the university level. Who will come to our institutions, which is located in a remote place? Maybe we are getting actually the first generation literate and second generation literate. And we are having interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary courses. We do not have adequate number of teachers, infrastructure. So some kind of apprehension is actually we are nurturing. But that is always there. It's not that we have always run over. Now, therefore, these are the issues actually linked with our research and how we will reshape our higher education system. So one of the important advantage that we are having, that I can become even located at a very far-flung places, which is Siliguri at the foothill of Himalayas, Eastern Himalaya, which is Darjeeling famously known as the hill station. Foothill of that region, I can get connected with the entire world. That kind of technology is there. And if we really offer a credible course, then not only will get my own students from vicinity, but a time may come that where I can get the global students at the global level. That is one way to look at the issues. The other way to look at the issues that if I can recustomize my research and higher education, so that the aspiration level, the ambition of the two-thirds of the population of India, if they are suffering from some kind of disillusionment that what this institutions and degree will give at the end of the day, and if they eliminate themselves at the school level, and where the gender aspect become again add another kind of challenges, then I will say this is the advantage for me. This is the latent forces I am having, and how I can accomplish that. Now, ADP has given us some kind of flexibility, or rather a flexibility. Now, this flexibility, if we can really look my research, my curricula, then, and if we really understand that what kind of resource base that my region is having, and based on that, if I can really understand that what kind of informal knowledge system exists, be it craft, be it arts, be it aesthetics, be it basic application of general logic to define some kind of scientific journey, which actually happening in close proximity with nature and environment, that most of the traditional people they do. And if we can make them part of that particular knowledge system, or if that knowledge system become part of the higher education institute, or maybe down the level, down the line, then certainly it may not be achieved within 2 years or 3 years or 4 years time, but certainly a long-term policy, medium-term policy, and short-term policy from that direction. That is why when you talk about the higher education and society, so this is a huge kind of advantage even my own institution can take. And we find that knowledge and the outcome of the knowledge in the informal knowledge system is so rich, so huge. I need to tap it and I need to make it global. How it could be done? A simple, you take any of the, for that matter, craft or the artisan community. You find that they are struggling in your region. They don't find market. They don't find their present generation to take up that particular skill. Contrary to that, you just make a click. You click your Google it or any online portals. You will find that all those traditional crafts are in a huge market, global market. But the people who are part of that, they are hardly getting tuned with that. Now, if you talk about the skills, okay, if we get entrepreneurs like Ratan Tata or Ambani's or Adani's or Godrej or Birla, it's very good. But skill doesn't mean that is all the time such a big entrepreneurs will come. Skill means that how to tap through research, my scientific knowledge, my formal knowledge system actually should get integrated with this informal knowledge system. And who are owning this informal knowledge? You are part of that. It is the excluded segment of the population that can actually allow me to sustain that the competition that is we are already facing, or that is going to be much more tough in the days to come. Or rather, we have to become more and more competitive, keeping the certain social aspects and social obligations in mind. Then possibly this is the area we should look at, especially the institutions which are located in relatively isolated places, relatively infrastructurally backward, relatively catering the requirement of the people of the surroundings who either fail to get into the formal education system or left out from the formal education system. And that will change the dimension of our research from the global issues. Certainly, it is there. But if you look at the global issues, 17 sustainable goals are there with 269 parameters. And out of that, majority of those parameters are actually different social issues. Now, if the world intelligentsia, if they understand the importance of environment in late 1960s, if they realized in 1991 that sustainable development is important, and in 2015 they come out, realize that a lot of social issues are equally important. So therefore, the sustainable goals are there. I don't think that it's a huge advancement of the formal knowledge system. Rather, it is the submission of the formal knowledge system before the informal knowledge system that we understood you much later. We took pretty long period of time, but we want to address it holistically. That is why these linkages are there. We try to forge the linkages. Now, if I talk about the research and the degree, we call it as a Doctor of Philosophy. And it has been suffixed by in, and then your discipline is coming. So not only you did it, your scholars they are doing it, and many scholars you are having those who have already been awarded. And my proposition is this, that whenever I'm getting this particular degree, notionally, it means that, okay, I got the freedom to carry on research independently, and later on it become some kind of preconditions for getting into higher education institutes. But this is a very narrow version of the PhD. Certainly, doing independent research means I have been acknowledged that my research thinking now can take different dimensions. Fair enough. But the intrinsic issues are actually, sorry, just if you allow me to take a break and just I'll receive this call and have a cup of a glass of water and I'll come back. Just 2 minutes. Please bear with me. Just 2 minutes, I'll come back.
Okay, sir, sure, no issues.
Okay.
Hmm.
सर वॉइस नहीं आ रही है सर, नॉट ऑडिबल सर.
No, sir has taken a small break. He would be joining soon.
Yes, I came back. Sorry for a small break I took. Yes, yes. Am I audible? Am I
Yes.
audible?
Sir, yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, sir, I can hear you.
Let's start. Actually, that any kind of research we talk, whatever be our discipline, we basically address three problems, three philosophical problems, actually. Now, what are these three philosophical problems? So you can look at the slides. The first is called the philosophical problem itself. It's not the problem that I created. Is the problem is not raised by any individual, but it is the way the entire philosophy has panned out. I'm not getting into, I'm not a philosopher also, so I may make a mistake. Please do forgive me. Now, philosophical problem is actually raising different philosophical questions which say that man's place in the universe and the highest goods of all living beings are ethics, and which ultimately lead us to epistemology, a theory of knowledge. Now, this is some kind of broad statement. Now, I will keep on. But philosophy is raising questions on this particular domain, that man's place in the universe. Immediately, the question that philosophy raises, and irrespective of discipline, we address that only man will possess the earth or the universe. You immediately you say, no, it's not that. This beautiful art is not only for the mankind only, but other living beings, including the virus, is also having a right to live. It is our mistake, our extravagant approach that allowed the pangolin and bat to mingle with us. And maybe we allowed the SARS virus to be here. Forget about the Wuhan issue, Wuhan lab or US lab, all those things. But that is the reality. Then if it is that is the reality, then question comes to the what is reality and what is mere surface appearance. Now say for example, the room that I am sitting at this moment and the background that you can see, it is a real background which is being transmitted virtually. But say for example, I am using some kind of virtual background, which are there available. You are all of us, many of us who are using time and again. Had it been in my room, say on my house, possibly the walls, there are cracks, the used clothes are hanging. I find it okay, my background shouldn't be there. So instead to just put a veil on that, I use a virtual background. It seems that, oh, fine, the background is so beautiful. Then I realize that it is not the reality. It is mere surface appearances. Or the room does not exist maybe 20 years back where I'm sitting at this moment. So what is reality and what is surface appearance is a bigger question, and we are trying to constantly, we are working on that. And by following that particular question, the next question comes, is the world of physical things real? Or is the real only what is physical, material, and tangible? Obviously not. The answer is no. So then what about us? Are you only a body? A material organism? which avoids pain and seek pleasure? A collection of atoms programmed to grow, to mature, and to self-destruct? Or a product of the genetic material inherited from the past and a product of the environment in which we have lived or have been living? So that particularly raises a fundamental question, that are we a product of the environment? And if we follow the recent dominant research problem or the global problem, that is nothing but climate change, global warming, and subsequent changes that is taking place. And if you really concerned about that, the human beings, possibly it would not have been, we would not have reached to such a situation. Now, why this situation got aggravated? Forget about the Industrial Revolution, the growth of Europe, the use of natural resources, depletions of that. Okay, I'm not going into that issues. But one very specific changes that took place in post-1991, that's more prominent. Before that, it's maybe from late 80s, it started changing. The type of society we are, that means the type of philosophy we have adopted. We gradually gravitate from a need-based society to a greed-based society. So if it is a need-based society, and if you look our ancient philosophy or Orientalism, what we talk about, that philosophy says highest good of all living beings, which is guided by a value system. Now, what is value? Value is a moral judgment, ought to be or ought not to be. It's not that it's missing in Europe. If you look the post-Renaissance Europe, they are also moved in that line. And that is why, for a pretty long period of time, we forced to believe that it is the sun which is rotating around the earth. And later on, it's Galileo, Copernicus, and so on and so forth. They told that what is surface appearance is not the reality. The reality is something else. It is the earth rotating around the sun. So, if it is the one out, the other way is to look at the issues that ought to be and ought not to be. So, therefore, it's again that triadic process, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Why is it so? Because I told that what is the meaning of freedom. Then we realized that, for example, we understood accepted freedom means tyranny. And then we realized, no, tyranny is not the freedom. Then we understand that the freedom is something which will give me, allow me to do anything to everything. And later on we realized, no, it is not also a freedom. The freedom is something which is actually integrating the mind and heart. So mind is giving you some kind of logical order, and heart is giving some kind of joy. So it cannot be measured. It's not tangible. And that is why the philosophy say that does our reality consist in our being a mind or a soul? And we gradually transcend to metaphysics. And that is why we have been awarded with Doctor of Philosophy. That means we try to answer this question implicitly or explicitly, irrespective of our discipline. Therefore, doubt is very important for an institution. And if you look closely, follow that doubt is always being raised. That is why the epistemology, a theory of knowledge, it is not absolute truth. It is a relative truth. That is, quest for relative truth is actually creating a theory of knowledge. And if we talk about the theory of knowledge, that is nothing that the technical term used the epistemology. But what it's all about is that constant change is the reality. That's the Darwin. And if you look from your disciplinary orientation, and if you look at your research question, your hypothesis, be it within a deterministic structure, be it in a probabilistic structure, or be it in a manner which actually try to respond or try to make a synergy between mind and soul, entire literature or creative world, that's precisely so. So therefore, when we talk about the research, even whether there is a NEP 2020 in place or whether NEP 2020 is not in place, the interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity is actually, it's remain within the knowledge domain. Now we are more consciously approaching that. Well, for that matter, if I want to work on the climate change, being a student of economics or having some knowledge in economics, I try to approach through my methods or methodology. But methodology is not the epistemology. Methodology is one of the logical order that we follow to add something to the existing knowledge system. And there is no rational boundary that I cannot transcend. Because say, for example, if I have to work on the global warming, I may work on the impact on agricultural productivity. Someone may work on the impact on the ecology. Someone may work on that. Okay, we got the global warming, but what was a beautiful climate? And based on that climate, some natural folk song that depicts that how beautiful the life was. And that life was a need-based society, not a greed-based society. Because greed-based society is nothing but the material affluence. And as we gradually gravitated in the post-1991 scenario, we actually transgressed from a need-based society to a greed-based society. And that is adding more and more complexities. So maybe up to 7:15, I think I am having the time, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll try to summarize the thing or gradually try to. So another important problem, therefore, within the domain of the philosophical problem, I can say the sociological problem. And sociological problem is relation between the individual and society. Then again the question comes that if it is society, then again I'll go to this moral judgment. Moral judgment doesn't mean that right or wrong. If I say this is right, this is wrong, I actually behaving like authority. And authority means I cannot be authoritative. So I cannot become authoritative means I always look for ought to be and ought not to be. And ought to be and ought not to be, it's a collective decision. And if it is a collective decision, then the question is that the basic two premises we got from the Renaissance, that is cooperativeness and companionship, that is the two important ingredient of the Renaissance, that is companionship and cooperativeness. And we'll find that actually We are in a prisoner's dilemma. Even if we tell that, okay, our society, India, is having a beautiful democracy, we have a lot of liberal ideas, which have not only our past has given certain kind of reflection on that, and we also learned this the sense of liberty and liberalism from the West. But what is the core to that? Core to that is the companionship and cooperativeness. And you find that you are at the 8th floor or 9th floor in a very beautiful shopping mall where food court exists. Thousands of people are having food together. You may say, oh, what a beautiful sight of companionship. But if you look closely, or rather we know that no, it's not a group of people who are not having food together. It's not sharing. They're not sharing. It might be two friends or a small family, and none of them are looking at the other tables. So this is nicely told by Guljar. भीड़ में रहकर भी आप तन्हा तन्हा रह जाते हैं. So भीड़ में रहकर भी तन्हा तन्हा रह जाते हैं means I am negotiating loneliness even within a crowd. Means you are commuting in any public conveyance. Hardly people interact. And nowadays we become more isolated because there is a screen, mobile screen. There is something I blocked my ear. I not prefer to hear. Though I prefer to boast of. So that means the companionship is lacking. And if we talk about the cooperativeness, a very simple example that's from I learned from my economics textbook. I prefer to share. It's not difficult. It is called prisoner's dilemma. Now, prisoner's dilemma means that two persons got imprisonment with a condition that they cannot be talk to each other. That was the precondition given. And the another condition that's laid down that any one of them may complain against us. So initially they got a 1-year jail term. So if they complain against each other, the jail term would be increased to 3 years. And if they are not allowed to talk, and if you keep on repeating this particular puzzle, the outcome is that both of them landed up complaining against each other and getting 3 years imprisonment. So what actually it tries to say that we generally prefer to ignore the cooperation. Even if we have certain societal structure, but getting more and more smaller and become gradually, it's become micro level. And I don't know that the days are not far away. Possibly the nanotechnology and will be considered synonymous, or nanoparticles and will be synonymous. So I'm not criticizing, but what I am telling that I am also part of that. That means the type of negotiation that we make within the societal structure. That is a sociological problem. And this sociological problem is pointing to the another issue. That is, are we products of nature, I asked, but are we breaking a natural rule of the nature? Now, say, for example, we follow Gandhiji. Now, Gandhiji talked about non-violence, and that the world admire. That's absolutely fine. But have you remained non-violent to the environment? Have we ever practiced non-violence to the environment and nature? Absolutely not. And that is why we landed up to this particular situation of non-cooperation. Non-cooperation not only with the society or the individual, but the major non-cooperations with the environment and the nature, actually, which we are part of that. So that is having a very serious ramification. That is why I need to discuss and doing research seriously that on sustainable development goals. And this is the last problem, that is the political problem within the field of realm of philosophical problem, the problems of philosophy. That is the political problem. That is the relation between individual and a state. And what are the moral basis of the state? So if this has been raised, certainly the type of research you will carry or you would be allowed to carry on in India, can you think to carry it in the same way in North Korea? The answer would be no. The type of questions as an Indian citizen I would be able to ask, possibly I would not be able to raise the same type of questions in North Korea. So therefore, if you look at the history, the transitions from feudalism to capitalism in the West, maybe the capitalist structure, there is a lot of argument and counter-argument in the theoretical level. I'm not going into that. But it obviously brought a particular term, that is nation, state in between the people. Now this nation, the way West perceive, the way we perceive, okay, that is different issues of research. But at the same time, it is equally important that from people, the term sovereignty, before that it was not there. So it is the nature of the relation between individual and state, the important part again, that the linear relationship that we forged in terms of putting people at the top. And that is why the nation and state, it has been joined with the word people. That the question is that if that people and if that sovereignty, if that remain important to the dimension and direction of the research, then on which it is based on? It is based on argumentation. Now, what is the argumentation? Argumentation is actually have two parts, affirmation and critique. Now, the spelling of the critique is C-R-I-T-I-Q-U-E. There's another word is C-R-I-T-I-C. Now, critique Q-U-E means that actually I am asking questions and try to add something to the epistemology or theory of knowledge. That is my research is all about. But is it at any stretch of imaginations, be it mind and soul, that's a tricky proposition. I am not capable enough to handle it. The philosophers, they would be able to do that. I do not have the training. But I understand that my research or everybody's research is basically a kind of critique, means that you are trying to look critically the previous research. And that is why we tell that literature survey, and from literature survey limitations, you find it out, research gap. These are okay technical terms being used. But in reality, irrespective of the discipline, is basically we try to come out with the modifications or additions to the previous relative truth. And then affirmation comes. Okay, I accepted it. But there is another connotation to this argumentation also. If I say CRITIC, I'm criticizing. If I become too critical from that perspective, everything I am negating. Whatever being proposed, I say no, it would be disposed of. I will negate it. That will lead to anarchy. And if I become too affirmative from the political structural view, then I will pave the way. The democracy actually will pave the way for the autocracy. And here again, more importantly, we will be dictated towards that individual convenience may force us to affirmative. But if all the individuals started becoming affirmative, then they will pave the way. Some kind of authoritarian regime and sovereignty will be suffer. And if sovereignty suffer, the people that which join the nation and state, they will suffer. And if they suffer, then the ethical basis will be challenged. And if you look the entire Indian constitutions and the philosophy behind these constitutions, it is actually based on these premises: highest good of all living beings, then moral judgment ought to be or ought not to be, which is guided by the duties. We may say fundamental duties and fundamental rights. That means a certain value system. And this value system is basically outcome of inner happiness, not a material happiness. And if you really follow the Indian knowledge system, which we generally talking about, is nothing but the philosophy that we give to the entire world, that is having a much more robust, strong, cohesive, collective, and cooperative. So therefore, whenever we are doing research, these three problems we are addressing, irrespective of the subject domain. So therefore, when we have been awarded with a PhD, I may say that okay, I did my PhD in chemistry, and I may say that I didn't say foreign by any language. But at the end, implicitly or explicitly, we addressed these questions. So therefore, what we are doing, we are trying to add to the theory of knowledge. That means from irrespective of the discipline, we are actually searching or researching the relative truth. And that is why when you talk about the knowledge system, the convergence from the formal knowledge system and informal knowledge system, or rather, formal knowledge system will converge to the informal knowledge system. That is always their philosophy. Otherwise, a last segment of the living beings would be excluded, and that we are not doing. So therefore, intrinsically, we are interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary in our approach. Only thing is that the disciplinary orientations are to be joined. And that should be the future direction of the research. If we talk about the collaboration, when you talk about the collaboration, then collaboration has to be an ethical collaboration. When the term that's coined that international conferences, that okay, you come for networking. Now, for which we are this networking? Networking is to increase my H index or I index. Or the impact factor. It should be only individual driven. Will it be? Will the entire outcome of the research will mostly remain caged, or a virtual lock would be there? And to unlock it, you need to pay a certain USDs. Will it be? In that direction? Or open resources? Open source software, open source resources. That would be more important for us. And if you follow the changes that can taking place, on the one hand, this virtual lock is getting stronger in the research fraternity. But to unlock that, the platforms are also being created. So if Sci-Hub is an ethical hacking, now we have a number of platforms being created where the repository of resources, research outcome become accessible. Now the question is that not only the research, but also teaching. So there are two ways. I can take the informal knowledge system and making part of the curricula so that the people who are surviving with informal knowledge system and fail to get into the higher education institute, not only they will be bring back because not of flexibility exists, but at the same time, research has to be integrated in a manner so that that virtual lock shouldn't be stronger. So more or less, that's the way I perceive the research and development, because we need to understand that though government has promised 5 to 6% of spending, it may not take place. Maybe we will be among the countries we are spending our relatively less on the government level, because generally the argument that's given that our research and industry linkages is poor. And one of the reasons for that, the way West is industrialized, we are not industrialized in that way. That is even one way to look at it. Okay, maybe we expect that government would, when there is kind of a arrangement, the budgetary statement, if you closely follow. Unfortunately, over years, irrespective of the government, health and education always become a casualty for the allocations. I hope that this is going to change in future. Or it must change if we really want to become a leader in the global knowledge system. And if we want to remain really inclusive in nature, this is a mandatory. This is not a choice, but this is a compulsion. But again, we have to confront a certain degree of competition where we need to be efficient. Else who knows that tomorrow from a unitary university I become within a cluster of university. From a unitary college I become part of cluster of colleges. And some kind of leader-follower model will be there. And even if we fail subsequently, maybe I may think that my superannuation age is 65 years, I have my pension. So why do I think more? But possibly the reality will force us to think in different ways. So from that perspective, NEP 2020 is a document. We give some kind of indications that what is ahead in future. So the question is that how we grapple with the reality that must be a very important issue, and certainly it will vary from one institutions to other. And it must be so, because an institution located at Ladakh and institutions located at New Delhi cannot be the same. Had it been so, then the US structure of economy, if it been implemented in one of the African countries, they within 20 years down the line, they would have become as strong and as good as US. But that doesn't happen. That never happened. And that is why one of the prominent Nobel laureates, Douglas North, he precisely proved that one, that it is not going to happen. So this heterogeneity will always be there. And this heterogeneity means that there would be some kind of unevenness. But we have to see that remain uneven also. There are certain synergy can be forged. Possibly that's the way we can go collectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for this wonderful lecture. And I hope all of us have enjoyed it and would have learned a lot from your discourse today. Thank you so much, sir.
It's really, I am really grateful for very patient hearings from all the esteemed teacher participants, and I'm really grateful to Aligarh Muslim University, Dr. Sayyid Atif Jilani sir, Faiza Abbasi ma'am, and all the stakeholders of MMTTC MU, and all the participants, and we remain connected, whether it's virtually or physically. Possibly collectively we'll grow, we'll help each other, or rather we'll cooperate and remain
This is the beauty of these online platforms, that we are able to connect to far off places and people, and we are able to get eminent resource persons like you in this orientation and sensitization program. Thank you so much, sir, again.
Thank you, all of you. Stay well, stay connected, and we'll keep on meeting and discussing. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All of you, have a nice cup of tea, get back to your family members, plugging off your earphone, and have a nice day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.